We've got Marcus Buff Bagwell over here joining us. Thank you, Marcus, for joining. Really appreciate your time. I know you're super busy, so thank you for, making a little time for us tonight.
This means a lot to me, brother. I enjoy talking about the business. I enjoy talking about life, so it means a lot to me too. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, where to begin? You've had a long and amazing career. I grew up mainly in the 90s, and I remember watching you on TV. I was a WCW guy. So you were with WCW for what, about 10 years, I think, 91 to 2001?
91 to 2001.
Very good. And you broke into the business quick, it seems, right?
As I got older and started really putting together, and a lot to do with this was my sobriety. When my sobriety when I started really using my brain and truly getting sober this last 21 months, that period of time to get into wrestling, if you were to ask me during my addiction, during that 20 years, hey, you got 3 seconds to answer this question. How long did it take you to make it to WCW? I'd say 4 or 5 years. And when I look back on it now, I tell the story. You graduate high school when you're 18 years old. Well,
yes, sir.
I went to the Atlanta School of Massage and became a massage therapist out of high school and not right after. So there's 10 months right there. Let's just round it off to there's a year. So sure. You're 19 now. And let's just say the day that I graduated massage therapy school, I said, I want to be a wrestler. Well, September 21 was my first interview with WCW. So wow. With not much arguing at all, from the day I said, I'm going to try to be a pro wrestler, the day I met Missy Hyatt, I think it's a year and a half, and I was at WCW, brother.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's got nothing to, I'm going to clearly say, it's got nothing to do with my ability. It had to do with the way I looked and some ability and a lot at the right place at the right time, man. It just, sure. Georgia independent wrestling is always one of the biggest because my first match was on TV. I was on wow. North Georgia Wrestling, with Joe Pedicino on Channel 69, which is still a big channel in Atlanta. I was on television my very first match, so it was a big deal instantly to me. And sure. And again, it seems like it was years of setting the ring up and wrestling in it, but it wasn't no time, brother.
Wow.
I went hard at it, but it was full steam ahead, but a year and a half, and I went from being in the auction barn training in Alpharetta, Georgia, to on WCW TV in Savannah, Georgia.
Wow. It's crazy. It's got to have to do with your ability, though. I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit because I know guys that have been on the indie scene for 10 years before they even get a chance at trying out, much less being on TV for what was it Turner at the time that was doing WCW?
Turner just had bought it, so okay. I worked for Turner the whole ride. Wow. When he came in, Sting, Dallas, me, maybe Bischoff. We're part of the few guys that were there the whole ride, sure, without absolutely. Going back and forth.
It's pretty crazy. Now you have to. Oftentimes you hear that people have to pay their dues. Did you get any pushback from the guys for not having? Not that you didn't pay your dues, but you had a fast track to get into TV, and whereas I'm sure you're dealing with guys that maybe were floundering for 10 years before they got that opportunity.
No, you said that perfect. I'll be honest with you. I didn't pay my dues. What I attempted to pay my dues, and it just wasn't in the cards for me to so-called pay my dues. I trained hard. I was in shape. I truly knew the gist of pro wrestling and got really good at it really fast. But there's no doubt about, like I said, there was a lucky thing to happen. But like I said, a lot of times lucky things happen to people and they're just not ready for it. Sure. It just so happens, I think I was ready for it. because I remember wrestling Chris Benoit on TV one night, and we're doing all of these moves. He's calling them the names of it, like fish out of the water, and
Sure.
all these names. I'm like, I don't know I don't know what those words mean, brother. And
Wow.
I go, but just show me I can do it. And
Yeah.
so we would go over the move, and I could do the moves. And so I could watch somebody. I was very athletic where I could watch somebody do something, go out and imitate it and look just like that and do it athletically. And so I was very good at watching what it was supposed to look like and recreating it. And then you start learning the names of things, and you get better. You get good really quick. But I really did have a fast track to WCW.
Sure. Well, I mean, it certainly worked out. Now, you started out as a singles competitor first, and then is that correct? And then you went into tag teams soon after?
Yes. So what I did was I started off singles, and then which I think everybody kind of starts single unless they come in with a partner. But I did come in singles, but it didn't take me long to figure out. Okay, there's two world belts. There's two world champions in both companies. There's the singles world belt, and look at that line. And then there's the world tag team belts, and look at that line.
Sure.
And it was a much shorter line to me with the same status. It
Right.
just made sense to me. And so now I didn't choose tag team. Dusty put me with Two Cold Scorpio in a tag team, and I just loved it. I loved it for all the reasons that I think all tag team guys love it for. You can go 100 miles an hour and tag out, and your partner can go 100 miles an hour. There's no reason why your tag match should not be the best match on your card every single wrestling match. I mean, every single wrestling card.
That's
Because
a good way to look at it. Yeah.
it really is. You got five. Sometimes you got. Let's see. Sometimes you got seven different brains trying to tell the same story. You got the
Sure.
wrestlers, you got the managers, and you got the referee. That's seven minds trying to pull a magic trick off. And when you do, it's really so much fun and it's beautiful if you tell it all the right way. And I was really good at going into the heat with tag matches and how to come out of them with the comeback. I was real good at choosing those spots. Even the night I broke my neck, that was my sequence that we went into to going into breaking my neck. And it was like, Rick Steiner did the comeback, boom, 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 boom. And then he clothesline Lex clothesline Rick Norton over the top. Then I clothesline Lex over the top. And then right there I turn and Rick Steiner's there slams me up for the Bulldog Paralyzed. But I remember that night because that was one of my best sequence I really liked going into the finish of
Sure.
matches. And that was a great sequence of things. But I was really good with that. And of course, you got to buy your time before you can speak up. But I would wait and listen and learn. And then finally it got to where people were saying, well, Bagwell, what do you think?
Sure.
And I would throw an idea out, it would work. So I really enjoyed tag team wrestling. And again, to me, it was a bigger status. I mean, it was just a big of status with a much shorter line for the world belt.
That makes sense. And it's funny. It seems like almost nowadays, it's almost a downgrade from being a singles competitor. Whereas back then, you had guys like you, and you had multiple partners that were phenomenal. And Too Cold Scorpio was actually one of my favorites.
Right.
But you had Nash and Hall. You had all these, mega stars that were on the tag team scene. Whereas now, I feel like you have to do that before you maybe hit that next level.
Yeah.
It's a little different.
It seems like it is. But I mean, like I said, the Rock and Roll Express. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
there's the Road Warriors. I mean, to me, it was definitely, I think, looked at like downgraded a little bit, but it still held the same status if you were champ. You were the world champions. And when you got that world champion belt, which I was 5 times with 4 different guys, you got that world belt. That means 5 times in 10 years, I was the champion. So that's a big
Absolutely.
deal. But it still bothers me that I wasn't in the line for the US belt, in line for the world belt, and even having maybe a TV belt while being the world tag team champion. But it
Sure.
bothers me I wasn't in line for some of that stuff. But when you're a champ, every other year, you're kind of consumed with World Tag Team stuff, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you probably stayed in that lane because you handled it so well too. So,
Yes.
I mean, I don't think that's anything to sneeze at. But you're right. It is interesting that you never had that opportunity. But to be honest, there's a lot of guys in WCW that I feel like didn't get to hold those straps too.
You're
I don't
right.
think
You're
that I
exactly
don't think
right.
that Scott Hall, just as one off the top of my head, was he ever heavyweight champion in WCW?
I don't think so. I don't
I
think
think
so.
Nash was,
Yep.
Hogan, of course, but I don't recall Scott Hall ever being.
I don't think he was, you know. And
Yeah,
again, that goes to show you right there the
yeah,
company you're with. You know, I mean, it's just it's an incredible status to have, and to have somebody like Ric Flair be, you know, multiple world champion,
oh yeah,
tag team. I mean, world champion multiple times is it really is amazing. There's so many moving parts to that, you know,
hmm
to get that kind of status. It's really incredible.
absolutely. But I don't think Ric Flair had the tag team straps all that much either, though, right? I think he was pretty much stuck in his lane as well. And maybe
He
that
was
maybe that works, but I don't remember him tagging too much in WCW, anyways.
No, and he didn't. So, you know, again, those guys, you know, he's known as the singles wrestler, and
Sure,
I think he enjoyed the single wrestling more. So
absolutely.
it worked out that way for him for sure.
Yep. Now, were there any wrestlers in either WCW, WWF, WWE, or TNA that you really had good rapport with, you enjoyed working with the most, maybe?
Ironically, one of my favorites guys to work with would be the person I went down in history with as having a bad match, which is I think ridiculous. But it's at least it's played that way and perceived that way. But with me and Booker T, we had really fantastic chemistry,
Oh,
and
I,
we
I
wrestled
agree.
those guys. I wrestled those guys so many times. I mean, it was,
hmm
you know, um, just our chemistry in the ring was just so great. And even that night, they said the bad match was there was nothing mechanically wrong with anything. They just felt like they just said it was a bad match, but people don't
Sure.
even truly understand what that means. I don't think. But when I see a bad match, I look at things like, you know, you go to clothesline a guy and he messes up and you hit him, or you
Sure.
leapfrog and both of you jump and hit each other, you know, that kind of stuff, you know.
Well, it's
So
it's funny you mentioned that because this is something that I talked to somebody recently and they said that once the internet gets a hold of something, that is now fact. It's no longer up in the air, and I think that this whole bad match thing with you and Booker is exactly that because I went back and I watched it actually last night, and it's not a bad match at all. It's There's no botches, if you will, and
right,
botches
that's
always
all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
yeah
There's no
yeah
botches.
Sure. Maybe it wasn't phenomenal, but I'll be honest. I'll tell you what one of your worst matches is, and it's not because of you. It's just one that I happened to see recently. It was you and Macho Man on Thunder. Man, it had to be 98,
I've
99.
got a story
Uh,
behind that.
all right, well, I'll let you go with it. But I just recently watched it, and I just sat there, and it was about a 10, maybe 10, 11 minute match.
Well,
And I don't
let
think
me
you got to
ask you a
move in
question.
there.
What did you see going wrong there? What did it look like was happening before I tell my story?
It looked like you were getting your ass kicked the entire time. That's
Yes.
about it.
Okay. Okay.
But
Well,
legit, but not a work. It looked like you were getting choked out for about 10, 11 minutes straight.
could you?
There was
Could,
just
you know,
no evolution to it.
I don't think I ever watched that back, but
Okay,
because I was so frustrated with it. But
sure,
you got to realize the position you're in to being in a main event Thunder match versus
absolutely,
Macho Man Randy Savage. That's up there, brother. I mean, that's at the
absolutely,
peak. And
absolutely.
so what had happened is that's when New Blood had started.
hmm
So we had our interviews we did, and they literally they printed out our interviews that we're supposed to say. I mean, verbatim, you know. And the interview was ripping Macho Man apart.
Sure.
And I was smart enough and been in the business long enough to know that there was going to be a repercussion for that. So the day I cut the promo, I saved the paper. And I saved it, you know, and all that, knowing there was going to be some kind of repercussion. Well, sure enough, here's me and Macho Man in the match. And I guess maybe I wasn't mean enough, is what I would call it, or I wasn't, But I really think has to be with probably I was just too green still to realize that what we were talking about, he was going to go out and eat me alive.
Okay.
I guess I just wasn't smart enough to the business, or also out of respect, this Macho Man and all that.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
so after the match, I'm ready to fist fight, and I'm ready to go knock him out. And I come to, I said, Randy, what in the hell? He goes, be careful how you talk about me, brother, next time. And I go, Randy, here, and I show him the
The
paper
list.
of what I was supposed to say, and he
Hmm.
goes, oh my God, I'm sorry, brother. And I go, it's too late for that, Randy. It's
Yeah.
too late,
Yeah.
bro. So
Yeah.
it was just really, I mean, he beat me up. And again, out of respect, I'm trying to go along with letting Randy, the Macho Man Savage, beat me
Sure.
up because he's the Macho Man.
Right.
But
Right. Right.
but at the same time, he wasn't quite trying to hurt me, but it was close.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was like, well, Randy, now, because Randy
Well,
wasn't a tough guy. He had a
sure.
bad temper, but he wasn't tough. So I'm
Hmm.
like, Randy, come on now. And then before you know it, that 11 minutes is gone and they have beat your brains out. I think the both girls drop kicked me and
They did. Yep. They did.
they all just beat the hell out of me.
They did. They looked like they were being stiff with you for sure. But
Now
yeah,
that
it just
now that was a bad match.
just because there wasn't much to. I mean, he pretty much just laid on your throat for the
Sure,
duration of that match. So there just
absolutely.
wasn't that growth to the. It didn't do anything for the story or anything like
Nothing.
that either. So, but yeah, that's the stuff that I would look at as a bad match, not you and
Sure.
Booker. You know,
But
just
what's so crazy to me is when they put it out there that this is why I got fired, people truly believed that. And
mhm,
and let me tell you the person that did not hear that the match cost me my job. Me.
really
That wasn't told to me.
okay.
I heard it in books and rumors. Well,
Hmm.
that was never told. It was never told to me. Hey, we are firing you for your bad match. Because I would have said, "What do you mean? Explain it
Right,
to me." Because
right, right.
something else you may not know is when we get to the back, me and Booker start bickering a little bit over the things not going so well. Forget
Sure,
the fact that I was told not to look in the camera. Forget the fact that Booker was told to shake nobody's hands on the way to the ring. Forget the fact that we got booed out of the building. Forget the fact that Stacy Keebler, which has never announced a match in her life, was announcing our match. Forget
yeah,
the fact that Double A, Arn Anderson, and Scott Hudson were a team for the first and only time ever in pro wrestling.
wow,
Forget all of that.
sure,
It just people believed it that it was that they said it was a bad match. But again, nobody told me that. I heard through the grapevine that it
right,
was over a bad match and my mother calling.
hmm,
I mean, give me a break. I when
yeah,
since who gets fired for their mother calling? But even if she had called, I mean, I remember for the first 10 years, I was defending the thing like, look, man, she didn't call. She didn't call. Then it finally hit me. So what if she did?
yeah.
Who
What's
gets fired for that?
right,
So I was like, you know what? I don't know if she called or not. But even if
hmm,
she did, well, who cares? Hey,
right, right.
Bagwell, tell your mother to not call us no more. Gotcha. Hey, Bagwell, if you have another crappy match, you're fired. Gotcha. There
Right.
was none of that talk. None of that talk was happened. It was just get out.
It's crazy that it went down that way. And it's unfortunate because if I think of the ideal superstar, if you will, for WWF at that time, I mean, I think that you check all those boxes. So I never understood it. So it's
Yeah,
it's
it was.
unfortunate that it went that way for you.
It sent me off on a 20-year ride that
Hmm.
I mean, I didn't want to be on, but buddy, it made sense to me that I was depressed and I was upset what had happened. So it took me on a 20-year venture that I like to have back, but I will never get back. And it's okay that I don't. Everything happens for a reason, but it could have
Agreed.
been a whole lot better of a story.
For sure. But hey, you're still here standing and you still got years left to move forward. So, um,
Absolutely.
not to get too ahead of things, but I watched your what's the show you just did not too long ago? Dark Side of the
Dark
Ring.
side.
And at the end of that, you mentioned that you'd like to go back to it and have another either a last match or a final run. Is that still something that's in the cards for you?
Oh, 100%. What's happening with me right now is it was too much to tell at first on how much was really wrong with me. But when I first got sober, there were three surgeries facing me. There was a knee replacement. There was my left foot surgery that I'm just getting over now. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's a third surgery coming back to the knee because my knee extensor mechanism doesn't work. With the car wreck, I broke it. So they got to rebuild that mechanism. And that mechanism is what allows you to walk up steps. It's what allows you to extend your leg all the way.
Okay.
And they couldn't do that and do the knee replacement at the same time. So instead of telling everybody that whole story of the three surgeries, I just got my knee replaced and then got my foot done. And then now the third surgery is here in 2 months. So I go back in to do that knee surgery. If that knee surgery goes 75% right,
Sure.
I will be wrestling again. So I really believe I will be wrestling again. It's just a matter of, where and at what pace.
Sure. Makes sense. Makes sense. And what's the recovery time if you even know on that surgery that you have to have?
I will know if I could. I would say I would know what percentage I can be at and be ready to go in like 9 months from now.
Okay. All right.
So
Very good.
9 months from now, I would be able to get in the ring and know, just what level I'm at and what level I can be at and with my knee.
Sure. Sounds good. And do you keep up with current wrestling, either WWE or AEW's? Certainly a big one now. TNA is still up and running. Do you
I
keep up
really
with all
do. I
that?
really do. I keep up with all of them. I really do. I love the business, and I just try to watch. I think The Rock, brought a lot back when he came in, and it just made me
Yeah,
really
for sure.
love. Yeah, it really reminded me of the old days, and you know, even The Rock called Dallas during that, and he goes, let's just be honest. He goes, wrestling ain't been cool for over 2.5 decades. It just
Yeah,
hasn't been cool. Over 2 decades, it has not been cool. And since WCW, since Nitro, wrestling really hasn't been cool. And
it's
now
true.
it's with Rock came back, it was kind of cool again. It really was.
That's true. It's funny. It's a big difference, I would say, in the last 6 months from how it had been for, I would say, exactly where you're pinpointing it to the end of the Attitude Era. When you could switch between Nitro and Raw on Monday nights. I mean, everybody in the world was tuning into one or the other, or at least knew who everybody was.
Right.
You had the NWO, which you were a massive part of as well, and I think that's what really made it super cool. Late '90s, all the way up until unfortunately WCW, was bought up.
Right.
So now I'd like to ask you about NWO because I got one thing I want to talk about. NWO went into the Hall of Fame, and they brought obviously Hogan, Nash, Hall, and then they brought Waltman into the mix, but you were left out, and a lot of other guys were left out. What's your take on that?
Um, I agree with that. I really
You do?
do. I mean, that was the original four.
Sure.
It really was.
Hmm.
I mean, I think it has a little bit to do with they're all buddies, but at the same time, not a lot, really. I mean,
Hmm.
X Pac brother. I mean, he was the Lightning Kid. It ain't like he ain't paid his dues, brother. He's the light. I mean, he's X Pac. He was the Lightning Kid at Global, and I think the kid was. I think he was like 17.
Yeah.
He was younger than me. He was
Yep.
17 or 18, 120 pounds, soaking wet, but he could work, and it was incredible. So, it ain't like he didn't pay his dues and he didn't afford, but it does, to be honest with you, it's kind of like the Three Stooges, the Three Amigos. It seems like there's always three. So I
Sure.
think ultimately it's Hogan, Nash, and Hall.
I
But
agree. I
still,
agree.
X Pac, if it ain't, I mean, anybody, any fifth person, I would have been upset to not be involved. But with those 4, I think that was fantastic.
Oh, all right, that's fair. I always,
So,
I just felt like it was
again,
a weird.
it was Hogan,
Yep.
Hall, and Nash, and Waltman, right?
In Waltman, correct.
It was 4.
Yep.
Yeah.
4.
So see, to me, not like I say, if there had been a Steiner, I'd been very upset.
Well, you
Like,
can't
there
have
would have
Steiner
been,
without Bagwell, and you can't have Bagwell without Steiner, in my opinion. So,
and that's what I always judged it by.
sure.
If something happened with Scotty, I felt like I should be right there, and vice versa. So
Yep.
my feelings wasn't hurt. I wasn't upset about it. But if Scotty would have went and I didn't, I would have been upset.
For sure, that makes sense. But you had a run with NWO, right? It was about 3 years, I would say, that you were with NWO.
Yes. I mean, I was there before Scotty was. I was the 7th guy.
Because you recruited him, right?
7th.
Okay, all right. Because who would have gone in before you? Waltman, Giant, I would think, and then the 3. I don't know if I can remember the rest of the guys that were okay.
Virgil was 6, and maybe who was Hogan's boy? Brutus.
Disciple, right?
Disciple may have been there, maybe. So that would have been, and he may not have been. So I was either 7 or 8 if you count the Disciple.
Okay, all right. Oh, all right. I would have put you and Steiner. I think it should have been 5 personally. Nothing against Waltman, but he only had a year, and I think he was injured for part of that year too. So I don't know him personally like you do. So I'll throw a little tension into that. But
of course,
it and then Bischoff I think is a huge part of NWO as well. So
yeah, he was a huge part, brother. He really was.
So that would be a good one to add in there too. But
yes,
yeah, I don't know. I always felt like it was maybe the buddy system keeping Waltman into that because I know he's close with the other guys there too. But it is what it is.
It was. Keep in mind it's a buddy system on all of us even getting in there, man. So
that's true.
It's just it really is. It really was a great thing that happened, and it really helped so many careers. It was not even funny.
Yeah, well, and it did a lot for the business too. Like I said, I think that's what really took it to the next level. Late '90s like that. And what did you think of when they brought it back and they tried to do it over at WWF with just actually Waltman did join them over there as well. I forgot about that.
I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but I never watched one thing of that.
Really?
And it ain't like I tried to not watch it. I think I was just digging so hard, man, to make a living that I didn't watch TV like that. I didn't have time. I was running, man. I mean, there was money to be made in the pro wrestling world, but it was very hard to do, brother. I mean, it was, I'd be in LA and I'd be back in Atlanta and I'd be back in California somewhere. I mean, I was working for 100 different promoters, and it was north, south, east, west, north, south, east. I mean, it was just running and gunning, brother. And I was sedated through the whole thing. I mean, I lost 20 years. I didn't lose it, but I was sedated heavily for 20 years. I was very depressed about the WWF firing me. I was very upset about that. And then I was mad and bitter. And so I made it okay. I made it make sense that I got sedated and made it make sense to me that it was okay.
Right. Well, it's a tough thing to go through for sure. And then at that stage, I would imagine you weren't anticipating obviously being let go by WWF. So you've got bills to pay. You've got a mortgage, I'm sure. So you're running all over for independent promotions. Cause I know you were with TNA for a little while. You were in Australia with, I forget that company, but they were around
WWA.
And I believe
World
Sting was
Wrestling
there.
All-Stars.
Okay. World Wrestling All-Stars. And was that just Australia that you toured through with them, or was it?
I think we did some other countries while we were over there, but it was mainly just Australia. A guy named Andrew McManus was the promoter for that. He was supposedly an old Rolling Stone promoter, guy,
Okay.
and he came across wrestling. And I mean, I don't really know because I wasn't in the curtains of what was going on, but
Sure.
I'm pretty sure that Jarrett and Andrew McManus, that's where TNA got started. Was
That
over in
was the start.
Australia.
Okay.
Was them talking about it and then bringing it back over here. You know.
Gotcha. Okay. And you were over there with, and I know Jarrett was a part of it. Was Sting was a part of it too, right? After.
I mean, name somebody, and they were part
Yeah.
of it. I
If
mean,
they weren't
Brett,
with, sure.
if you wasn't with Vince, you were in
Right.
WWA.
Wow. And how long did that go on for? Were they in business a couple of years?
I don't think it was 2 years. I really
Not even.
don't.
Okay. Okay.
It may have been, but it don't seem like it was, man.
Yeah. Well, time flies, so I can certainly understand that. So
I
then
mean,
it
time
kind of,
does fly.
yeah, yeah, and then it became TNA or some version of it. What went on to become TNA over here,
Right.
and you were with TNA for a couple of years, right?
Well, that got washed away pretty quick too, brother. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was. I'll never forget it. It was. We had Huntsville, Alabama.
Yep.
Was TNA's very first show ever, and man, they had me advertising everything, and it was for some reason I remember this. It was live, so I had I was going to newscasts live and showing up as Buff Bagwell, and I come back to a radio show and a TV show, and all it was live, and it was all the same day as our start, as our first thing in Huntsville. And I get to the building after, acting like I'm going to be one of their bigger stars for the company, and I'm doing all the advertising and everything, and the very first match of TNA's career was a 20-man battle royal.
Oh wow.
And I was the first guy thrown out.
Jeez.
And I didn't care about that.
Yeah.
I wanted to know why they would get a guy that's the first person beat in the TNA world. Why would they get that guy to run and do advertising for them?
Yeah.
I didn't
It doesn't make
understand. So I was
sense.
like, Jeff, explain to me why you would forget me. I could care less about me losing. Why did you have me advertise for your company? Why?
Yeah. It doesn't.
And
Yeah.
they acted like I was crazy, of course. Oh, no, that's nothing, Mark. Don't worry about it. I'm like, guys, that's not good. Don't you understand? That's not, forget me
Yeah.
being upset about
That
it.
doesn't.
It's not smart.
Right. 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 Yeah. That makes zero sense at all. Um, and he was in full control at that time, Jarrett.
I think the heat was that I was with. I think the heat was because of the father.
Okay.
He knew that I was into drugs or prescription drugs and stuff, and he didn't like it. And I know that it was some heat with me and the father. Then they wanted to. The storyline they had, they wanted, and I agreed to do it, but it was some kind of storyline where I was blaming Buff for all of my stuff.
I
was
remember
blaming the Buff.
those promos. Yep. I
Remember
remember the
that?
promos. Yep.
But the story was it was supposed to be I was going to kill the Buff character, but then I was going to have Ricky the Dragon Steamboat be my protege. So
Oh,
the day
okay.
we were going to
Okay.
do this, there's no Ricky the Steamboat there. So I'm like, guys, where's Ricky? Oh, he'll be here. He'll be here. And I'm like, oh boy, what's going on? So
Yeah.
there was never a Ricky Steamboat. And all of a sudden
Wow.
it's time for TV. And
And you
so
went back as
again,
Buff, right?
Mark Bagwell's got his chance again here to
Yeah.
go with what he's supposed to go with or cause a problem. So I chose not to cause a problem and go with it. So I did all the promos, like sitting at ringside saying,
Yeah.
I don't like Buff anymore and having
Yeah.
LaParca beat me and all that stuff, It
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did exactly what they wanted me to do. And it still ended up horrible and didn't make sense. And another losing end,
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't seem like a well thought out angle by any means, but yeah, it's unfortunate that it seems to just be one thing like that to the next where it's just not well thought out. But it
It
seems
really
that
was a little bit.
yeah,
It
but it
wasn't
seems
thought out very
Jarrett
well,
brought you back later on too as part of his angle with Sting, right? Because I remember was that mid 2000s or so. You were back at TNA.
Yes.
Okay. And you were on Sting's side. I remember that. It's been a while though. It's been a while
and
since
and,
I.
and I blew it. I blew it. I started partying with the Nasty Boys and fell out in the bar.
Oh, okay. Well, I've heard a lot of people party with the Nasty Boy, so I could see how that could
Yeah,
be a problem.
it ended badly, and of course, Sting had brought me in, and so
Yeah,
that kind of got washed out again, and there I
sure.
was again, kind of failing when the eyes were on me again.
Gotcha. And Sting seems like a good dude. Do you keep in contact with him?
Bro, there is no better person
It
in
seems
the
like that's
world.
everybody's story when it comes to Sting.
I mean, it's just really the truth. And the best way to say it so people believe me a little bit is there's definitely not been another wrestler I met that's nicer than Sting through and through. I mean, Lex is right there, and the Steiner boys, and I was friends with a lot of guys, but through and through, man, Sting's the best. He just really is a great guy. He, just really genuinely cared. He would he put his best foot forward every time he got a chance, and just he was just always there for you, and just a really good guy. And I watched him find Christ, and it was really a tough thing to watch because he was really struggling with a lot of things, but man, did he come out of it shining.
He sure did, and he just seems like just a really good person. I briefly bumped into him at a Starbucks a couple months back after his last match down in North Carolina,
Where'd
and
you
just
see we're
seeing him
at?
the airport 4 in the morning, right? And he had wrestled till about 12:30 a.m. So we're talking about 2-3 hours later. Bump into him at the Starbucks at the Greensboro airport, and just the nicest guy to everybody around him. And you're talking. I mean, he went through plate glass that night. All this stuff. He had the presser, yeah, the press conference after, and still, just glowing, walking through the airport, shaking hands, taking pictures. Just it
Wow.
definitely spoke volumes of his character. As a
That
human
really
being.
is fantastic, and I love to hear
Yeah.
that story. It's a great story.
Yeah, yeah, just a genuine guy. You can just tell it just beams off him. So, were there any other guys like that were? Because I know it's a tough business and not everybody is that genuine. Are there any other guys you could think of that are kind of close to that level?
No, no, and it's a flat out no. There was
All right.
nobody else that I met that was of that level. There just really wasn't. I mean, there was a lot of great guys. I mean, I loved Brian Pillman. I loved Stone Cold, Eddie Guerrero's. I mean, just oh my God, it just goes on and on. Nash's, Halls, Luger's, Flair's. I mean, I knew them all, brother, all of
Yeah,
them.
I mean, you
But
worked with I think the best wrestlers of all time. Just
there's
between
no doubt about it. No
just
doubt.
just in the 10 if we just looked at the 10 years of WCW alone, I think
Right.
everybody came through and you got to work with them, have matches with them. It wasn't just you were in the locker room with these guys. I mean, you wrestled all of those guys.
Right.
So that's incredible.
It really
And
was. It was very special. The very first thing that ever happened good to me in the business that I knew was going to be impactful was when um, I'd go down and get beat up by somebody, and Sting would come save me. I
mhm,
mean, instantly I knew. I was like, man, this is going to be big. But then, of course, a month into that, I'm going to Dusty, going, Dusty, I'm getting beat up again. I mean, come on, man. He goes, hey, baby, don't worry about it. Everybody's going to forget about that. He goes, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Trust me. Trust me. And it was the hardest thing to trust because I was getting beat every week. But
wow.
I trusted him, and he was right. Nobody cared, and everybody forgot about that. When you start winning and you bring something to the table that matters, they don't remember the old. And everything he said was true, and it was wonderful to see. But Sting coming down and being able to carry me off as the rookie, it worked, man. It really
Yeah.
worked, and it was
Oh,
great TV, and it worked good.
yep. And that was all Dusty's doing?
All Dusty's baby. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And what do you think of Cody? Because I think that Cody has just blown it out of the frame with what he's done over there and
I think
restarting
it's,
his
I
whole
think
run with going back to the indies and stuff. I'm just blown away by what he's created over there.
it just, I mean, it's kind of snuck up on me. It just blows my mind. I mean, when I really saw when The Rock was actually on TV and in the ring with all them boys, it just really was a clarification of how good Cody's done. I mean, when you're in the ring, for example, with me, when you're in the ring with Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, you probably are doing the right thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I would say if your main event on the WWE WrestleMania 40, you're probably doing, and The Rock is in the
Probably.
ring. You're probably doing the right thing. And
Sure.
so it just really it wasn't, but to see it and really take it in was wonderful. And I really love it. I really love it that I'm proud to even say I'm kind of somewhat tied to that. I mean,
Yeah,
his
absolutely.
father hired me, and that means a lot to me. It's one of the first stories I tell because I loved Dusty Rhodes. He's who believed in me and gave me a shot. And so I like to tell myself that I'm part of Cody. He probably barely knows who I am, but I love Cody
I doubt
Rhodes,
that,
and
but
you know what I'm saying. I love him to
yeah, yeah,
death. And
yeah,
me and Dustin were lucky enough to be around each other a good bit.
yeah,
Love Dustin Rhodes, but I never got to hang around Cody much. But just really, really proud of him, and he's done a great job. And I love the story thing, and he got to
yeah.
complete his story, and it all made sense. And I just really, really am glad for him.
Absolutely. I think that he's hitting that next level, and I think now that's also a big part of it. Yeah, The Rock did a lot coming back, but I think a big part of that is Cody Rhodes and what he's created, and
No
he's
doubt.
transcending wrestling. People outside of wrestling know who he is. So I think he's doing a
Yes,
lot for the business.
he
Um,
is.
and he comes from that family, and I was a huge Dusty fan, will always be. Dustin, I think, is one of those guys that is just always so underrated as well. I mean,
Yes.
I remember when he came out of the audience from what was that? That has to be late '80s. Just absolutely phenomenal. So,
Yes, I mean
I
just
mean,
the boots and being called the natural because he
there
was
you
the
go.
natural. He
Yep,
was
yep.
he was part of bringing me in as well as the rookie and working with me and showing me stuff. So and he didn't feel threatened by me at all. He showed me everything he could teach me and help me along the way. And so just a
Sure.
really great guy and just a great family. I love him, and I think it's great what Cody's done.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And Dustin with the whole Gold Dust thing too. I thought that was ahead of its time. It was a strange gimmick, but he made it work. And he had
There
different
is
versions of it
nobody in the
too.
world that could have took that gimmick and done something with it. He took that gimmick and became over with that gimmick, and
Yeah, yeah,
that's just hard to know. No different than his daddy with the bumblebee thing, and
sure. Yep.
trying just overcoming what Vince had threw at him a little bit, and
Hmm.
again he took what could have been maybe a joke and made it great, and that's what the Rhodeses do.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I mean, we're 3 roads in, and who knows? Maybe we'll see more one day. But
Maybe.
yeah, it's really incredible to just kind of look back on all of that. And we talked about Macho Man Randy Savage earlier, and your match with him on Thunder. But what was he like to work with? Because he's one of my all time favorites. From being a little kid all the way up till today. I mean, he's still super relevant in everybody's mind still. I know he's got a history, I guess, of being a little bit difficult to work with. But what was your experience like with him?
That was, to be honest with you, that was the only experience I ever had with him. And me and Macho before that and after that, we stayed great friends. But it really did let me know that he wasn't a great friend because of the way he treated me. On anybody else that I could think of, in or outside of this business, if they had a problem, they'd have come to me man on man and said, "Hey, brother, what happened here?" And
Right.
I would have explained that Eric Bischoff gave me this note to read about you. And
Yeah.
for my job, Macho, I had to read it the way they asked me to read it. This is not my fault. And then it wouldn't have been a problem. Instead, he took a main event segment on Thunder and ruined it.
Yeah.
So, but
Oh,
I was a huge
100%.
Macho fan. Whoever wasn't a Macho fan, just don't know wrestling, because he was one of the best.
Yeah.
But I never worked with him inside or outside of that one match. But that really did like go, wow, man. I hated
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that it turned out that way, but you have to think, I mean, I guess we could touch on this. What now it seems, or it has been up until recently, a very scripted program. Was it not scripted back there in WCW? You pretty much had a direction to go in, and you could get there however you saw fit, or was that very common to be handed a paper that you had to read from?
Very uncommon, but
Okay.
it was so uncommon that a 26-year-old, I'm gonna call it kid, a
Hmm.
26-year-old kid that was in a very old, not very older, a older locker room, and much older mentally with the business.
Sure.
I was aware enough to fold that paper up and keep it. Put it that way. It was
Yeah.
that different that I went, this don't feel right. So let me keep this paper and just
Yeah.
make sure. And then sure enough, it came back, and it probably saved our friendship, because it didn't
Oh
save
yeah.
the match, but it saved our friendship.
Well, it's certainly good that you were
That's
able
what,
to have that mindset to do that, because yeah, we see now that it seems anyways that I think they're getting away from it from what I've heard, but it is very scripted in that they have dialogue to memorize lines. And I think Nash has talked about that too, how when he came back to WWF at the time, now they had to memorize lines like they were on a movie set. So it seems like a very different situation.
yeah, I remember like as soon as I was doing it, like, I mean, not verbatim, but as close to verbatim as you could do. And I remember, like I said, I remember feeling so wrong about it that I was like, hey man, keep this paper just in case. This is
Yeah.
something that's a little bit different. And sure enough, it came back to be a part of it. So yeah, it definitely felt wrong to be doing it. So I can imagine Macho watching it like, you little son of a bitch. Oh my God. But
Right, right.
again, he had, if he would have took a little moment to take a time out for it, it wasn't what I would do. He knows me. We were friends.
Yeah.
So there had to be more to it. And he knows his business. So I assumed he would know that it was told that I needed to say those things. But I think he was very shocked when I showed him the actual printout of what I said, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. But you worked with so many great guys. I mean, I recently watched you with Piper. Um, you had a good setup with him. Of course, you were with Hogan a lot. But did you ever wrestle Hogan, or were you
Never.
just? Yeah,
No.
that's what I thought. I was thinking about that earlier today. I don't think I ever saw Buff and Hogan ever square off. Maybe there was some
No.
tension, in the segments, but never a full on match or anything like
No.
that.
Remember he pushed me over that one time in the wheelchair.
That's what came to mind. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was kind of cool. And
Yeah.
but we never wrestled. No, we never did.
Sure. And did you have a close relationship with him, or was he kind of off on his own because he was, obviously, at the top of the top tier, level at that point?
He really was good about staying around us. Like, he would eat in catering with us. He was one of the
Hmm.
boys. He
Sure.
didn't like superstar us. I mean, in
Yeah.
Panama City, he had his own trailer and stuff, but we could go in and out and talk to him, of course, and stuff. And
That's good.
so we did. So he was very laid back, and Hulk was always fantastic to everybody. And I really, I really enjoyed it because of that. Piper was a little more set out to himself. I remember like he had his own locker room, and you never saw him.
Really?
He
Okay.
ate in his own room. He
Hmm.
stayed in his room, and Helwig was the same way. He came in at that short period of time. I
Yeah.
bet you, I think Helwig was there for 750 shows or something like that. It wasn't that
Really?
many. It was 750 grand
Okay.
for a few shows. And that's
Sure.
really what it was.
Sure.
But on those 40, 50 shows, whatever he came in for, I remember I saw him once,
Wow.
one time.
Wow. Wow.
One time I saw Buff Bagwell, saw him once, and
Wow.
we didn't speak. So it's
Hmm.
just he was a really distant cat. I was, of course, just completely marking out, like, oh my God, it's Ultimate Warrior,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he could care less. And he was
Hmm.
just really a standoff guy. But Hogan was real down to earth and just was super, super to be a part of. And I just loved Hulk Hogan.
That's good to hear. I think I was about 11 years old. I got to meet Hulk Hogan, and that pretty much made my life complete at that stage of my life. So,
Where'd you
and
meet him at?
it was a book signing in Madison, Connecticut, and I remember pulling up, as a kid and looking out, and Jimmy Hart was on the old school cell phone, out front of the bookstore, and you could see Hogan's, silhouette from outside on the street, and yeah, just very nice. I remember him just shaking everybody's hand and talking to everybody that came through. And it wasn't a huge crowd or anything like that, but yeah, he was just really a stand up guy. So
And the
it's
crowd
cool to
wasn't
hear
that
that.
big, huh?
It was, I think it was one of those things where they just kind of announced it like the day before, and it was a limited sort of engagement. So
Wow.
yeah. Yeah, I mean the bookstore was probably as big as the room that I'm in right now. It was real small too. So
Really?
yeah, yeah, it was when he did his autobiography. So that had to be, I think it was right after he came back for Mania with Rock. So I mean, that's
Yeah.
going back, 20 years now. So
Sure. Sure.
yeah,
That's
so
great. That's good stuff.
yeah, yep. And I had one other question. Then I actually have a buddy that is a huge fan of yours. I want to bring in to ask you a couple questions. But
Sure.
um, you have the WCW guys, you have the WWF guys in the late '90s, and there's this massive rivalry. What was it like backstage? Because you have guys on both sides of the line that are, close friends. I can name HBK and Nash, for example, or, Triple H and Kevin Nash. What is the relationship with friends that are on, both sides of the line there?
Well, it was deep, brother, because I didn't have anybody like that, and there was several guys that didn't. But of
Hmm.
course, the top guys like Hogan and Nash and all
Sure.
had a lot of stuff going on each way on the line, right on
Yeah.
the front line.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
war was going on, and the front line was friends. But the truth of the matter is, it was like a football game played in different cities. So the football game is Monday night. The
Yep.
football game is from 8 to 11. And the football game has their show is on in our locker rooms, and our show is on in their locker room. And we started off on Monday at 8 o'clock, and they're not on. At 8:59, we got the NWO coming out. We got Steen coming down from the Raptors. They've got at 9 o'clock, they've got, Stone Cold doing the beers and The Rock doing his
Yep.
thing. And it was just click, 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 click. And it was
Yep.
the next 2 hours there. So from 8 to 11 o'clock, it was the Monday Night Wars, brother. And
Yep.
it was, like I said, a football game in different cities. It was the same attack. And we would be on private jets with Eric Bischoff. And he would get the rating of Monday night. And he'd go, hey, we beat him again. And we'd be giving Eric high five. But really, we're like, this ain't good. This
Yeah.
ain't good, man. But this is our boss, and I'm making crazy money because of Eric Bischoff. So I
Yeah.
love Eric Bischoff, and I didn't want to be deceitful. But we're giving high fives like, is this really good? It's not,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
it? But
Right.
you had to act like it was because it
Right.
was our
Right.
boss. But we
Right.
knew down deep that it was not good because
Right.
as a wrestler, we need there to be two companies. We need there to be two. And so for Eric Bischoff, he's the boss. So he wants to run them in the ground. But as the boys, it just felt in our heart like this isn't good. This isn't good.
Right.
I remember vividly remembering seeing, and I don't even know exactly who they were, so I think one was Kane, and I don't know the other one, when they did the Nash Hall lookalike thing.
Yeah. Yep. I remember that.
I I was devastated. I couldn't believe it. We had actually finally we had beaten the WWF,
Yeah.
and it wasn't a good feeling. It was like, what have we done? Now,
Yep.
little did I know, I would be working for Vince in a
Yep.
couple of months and be
Sure.
fired right after that. But but you don't know it at the time. I'm like,
No, of
what
course.
now? He
Yeah.
actually made a fake diesel and a fake razor. What? So we just couldn't believe it because this was Vince McMahon, brother.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we just knew it, and we knew now at that junction, we were worried. It was like bad because
Yeah.
now we're having to give Eric high fives and proud of him. But now we're like, what have we done? Look,
Yeah.
we've actually done it. We put him out of business. And then before you know it, we're working for him.
Yeah. And did you ever deal with Vince directly, or did you go through Shane, or what was what was what was your chain of command at that time that you had to deal with? Because
My chain of command was Johnny Ace,
okay.
a little Shane, and a couple
Yeah.
of handshakes with Vince, but
Mm-hmm.
it was Johnny Ace.
Gotcha. And I had one other question before I turn it over to my buddy Joe here,
Okay.
but video games at the time. You guys had some incredible video games. Was that a big payday for you guys to be a character on the video games? Because I've heard other people say that was money in your pocket to have the video
Well,
games.
let's just say I'll never forget this either. I'm at home one day, and I remember Dallas Page calling me and going, "Hey man, did you get your have you checked your mailbox?" I said, "For what?" He goes, "Go to your mailbox and call me back." So I went to the mailbox, opened it up, and there was a $80,000 check, brother.
Wow.
80. I went and deposited. I mean, as I'm saying it right now, I'm remembering it. And it even feels like I'm telling a lie because how many $80,000 checks have you deposited?
Right.
It was beyond belief. But I went, 80, what? And I found out that every wrestler, maybe Hogan got something different, I don't know, but every wrestler, including Doug Dillinger, which is our security guy, if you're on the tape, you get 80 grand.
Wow.
So we
And
all
was that
got $80,000.
and was that for one video game?
One.
Wow.
The WCW versus whatever.
NW. Yep.
The biggest one.
The Revenge was probably the biggest one, but
What was
yeah,
the other
there were
one?
two. World Tour, WCW. I think that was the
It was
first
the
one.
Revenge one, I think.
Revenge. Yeah, that would have been like 98, I would think. I'm sure.
Oh, 80 grand,
Yeah.
brother. 80 grand
Wow.
for one video game. It was
Wow.
crazy.
Wow. And did you get that for the other games? Because you were on, I mean, I would think probably about 5 or 6 different games at that time.
I don't remember getting another $80,000
80.
check.
80 was the big one.
Keep in mind, brother, there was some 50s and 60s coming every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
So that was my payday. So I just thought they mispaid me or something a little bit, but it was really an extra check I got. Like I was like, wait a minute, did we get paid this week or is it next week? And then I started adding the math. I went, I got paid last week. So what is this for? And it was the 80, I'm like, what? And then I saw those 3 initials, TCQ or THQ.
Yep. THQ. Yep.
THQ. And
THQ.
that's when I knew it was something different. And
wow.
It was crazy.
That's incredible. So even the security guards, so you got to figure you guys had a massive amount of wrestlers. So that's some serious money that they were throwing out. And what about action figures? I would think action figures have to be a big one too.
You got to also remember my run, there wasn't computers, bro. So if you ordered something with my stuff on it, you got it out of the catalog and you phoned it in to order it. So we're kind of like, NFL players that missed that time, like Jim Brown would have been a multi-billionaire,
Oh yeah.
but
absolutely.
he made, 50 grand a year or something. Same kind of thing with us. If we would have had the internet when the Monday Night Wars was happening, we would have been filthy rich.
Sure.
But sense. We did not. And we were making so much money with our contracts. Action figures didn't come out till really late. Yeah. I think my first action figure was probably 97, 98,
Yeah.
So that
one right there.
That one right there.
It's that one right there.
And that was late, there was only 3 or 4 years of them.
Yeah. Yep.
And so, that wasn't, I remember getting it, man, and being excited though, bro. Like, yes, I find, but I don't ever remember getting a check for an action figure. I really don't.
Wow. Wow. That's interesting.
I just
Yeah.
remember my bi-weekly check was ridiculous, and I
Wow.
was very happy. And
Hmm.
I was so happy that I would say a prayer to God every time I got my check, no matter where I was at. I knew
That's
what I was
phenomenal.
doing was different, and I knew what I was doing I should be grateful for. So I
Sure.
was.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm going to bring my buddy Joe in here because he is a massive fan of yours.
Let's
I
do
told him
it.
that you're going to be joining us. So this right here is Joe.
What's up, Buff? What's going on,
How,
boys? How we
how
doing
you
tonight?
doing, brother?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Buff?
Doing fantastic.
Chase, I want to thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for
This is
being on.
this is a big treat. I'm all decked out. I got my RGG
What's
gear.
RGG?
It's
The show
Chase,
you're on.
retro gaming guy.
I love it.
I got to shout out my partner Vito. We do Perfect Storm Gaming on YouTube, a show. But today I'm RGG, and when you're RGG, you're RGG for life. So,
We're live,
There you
brother.
go. Appreciate it.
Buff, I'm a huge fan. I want to
love
first
that.
thank you before I get into my questions. Thank you for your entertainment and the joy that you brought so many fans, that you continue to bring so many fans and people. I thought it was unbelievable what you did for Scotty Riggs. Just thank you, man. You're the man.
Well, thank you so much. Let me tell you something right quick before we go any further. I want to tell you this. Like, I want to tell you, like, even today, somebody sent me a picture of one of the first outfits I wore. It was a black leather zip-up outfit.
Vest.
It was like a vest suit, and it zipped up. It had a silver belt, and it was nothing was on it at first. And I think my black hat was plain black at first,
Right.
and then it was. But this picture, I remember. I got it on my phone. It had Bagwell airbrushed on the side, the word Bagwell, and my hat was airbrushed. And as soon as I saw it, I got chill bumps. Like, how did I have the time with what was going on to get that to my airbrush guy?
You're gonna beat my question. That was my question.
Just thinking
Really?
that.
My
What's
question.
the odds on that?
It's crazy. So Chase and I talk wrestling, and I promised him I wasn't going to mark out tonight. So I'm
My
not.
point is, I marked out on myself. I don't know how. I truly don't know how I was that cool, brother. I really don't. I don't.
You were. I can tell you. I was 17, 18, and 97. You guys were rock stars.
We were, bro. We really were.
Yeah, man. No, that's my question. Chase and I talk wrestling often, and you spoke about it got stale, it gets boring, and I think the Austin Goldberg boom of theirs created a lot of cookie cutter wrestlers to just come out jacked with trunks, and they really miss what wrestling's about, which is comic and cartoon come to life, and you really embodied that. You had the overalls, you had the top hat, you had the leather vest that you're talking about. What was your inspiration for creating the Buff Bagwell character?
God, that is such a great question, man. I can tell you, I don't know. I can tell you that my broke neck inspired the top hat because I felt like I needed something, man. I was off TV for 3 months. That's 12 nitros and 12 thunders, brother.
It's an eternity.
So, and it's, again, when I say it, I think we're just it's just 3 months of, that's 12, that's 24 episodes I was off. So it was devastating to me. So things like the top hat came out idea. My mom helped me with that, and she came up with the face on the top, and and stuff like that, and it just made it better and better and better. But I think the Buff thing was just almost like having a right ear earring in 1988. That was almost a homosexual thing. It was teetering on doing the wrong thing. So I liked pushing the envelope on doing the wrong thing and making it cool. In Sprayberry High School, I remember having a pair of overalls on, one flap down, and I had a pair of pink Reeboks on. And again, what's my inspiration for that? I don't know, except I wanted to be different, and I wanted to do something nobody else would do. And so I looked at this magazine that my father and my mother used to get for me, and it was everything in there was borderline iffy. You know, like, man, I don't know about that one. If it was the I don't know, that was a definite bump out there.
So it was a rebellion thing. Cool.
It was a rebellion thing. I think a rebellion thing. My father, I would have to pierce my left ear every Friday night when we got ready to go out because my father would not allow it. So my ear would be all infected, and I would re-pierce it again, bleeding, so I look cool for the night. You know, it was crazy. So I do the rebellion thing, the against the grain thing, the what nobody else would do thing.
Right.
And so I did that way.
That's awesome, Buff. That's awesome. Yeah, I was watching for 4 guys. You, Paige, Goldberg, and Sting. You guys were, and you all were different as far as not having that cookie cutter. You had a look. You know, you all had the look about you. Awesome. Yes. That's cool. So my next question, Buff, is what are your relationships now as far as do you speak to anybody in WWE? There's a grassroots movement that you know may or may not know about to try to get you into the hall. What is your relationship? Do you speak to Hunter? Anyone from there?
Nobody. I have no connections. I make it clear every time I even tell the story of the WWF and WCW and WWE. I make it very clear that I love the WWF. I love WWE. I respected and loved Vince McMahon for everything he did. So when I tell the story of what happened to me, I'm not mad about it. I'm not upset. I mean, I'm upset about it, but I'm just telling the story of what happened. I probably shouldn't even tell it no more, but it's such a big story. People want to know about it. But I've been adding to the story that, look, I'm just telling the story. I'm not still mad about it. I'm not bitter about it. It cost me millions. And 15 years ago, I wanted to fight about it still. But 23, 24 years later, I don't really care. Yeah. It's gone. It's over. I love where I'm at. If I would have never done what I did, I never could have had this walk with sobriety and recovery the way I am. So
it's an amazing story.
Everything happens for a reason. And I'm really excited about where I'm at in life. I really lived a crazy, crazy life, and I lived to tell about it. So I really love that. And, you know, to answer your question, bro, it's a little bit like high school where you think you're going to all stay in touch and you don't stay in touch with nobody. It's kind of like that, brother.
It's a great analogy. Yeah.
You just really don't. You just, and it's nobody's fault. Life happens, brother. It happens with kids and ball and sports and just family happens. And it just becomes almost impossible. But all these WrestleCons and stuff we do as wrestlers, we see each other and we try to go around it and see each other at those events. And it's really good to do that.
It was awesome. I just found out, sorry to cut you off. You were in Jersey. I had to tell Chase, I was like, I just missed him. He was here last month. Anytime you're in Jersey, please just let me know. I'll drop
here, he's got my number. You let me know. Give him my number. The best way what I tell people that know me, that have my number.
I'm ready to spray paint the camera, RGG. So.
Well, what I tell people that have my number is I say, look, I'm not going to know when I'm coming to a certain place, but you'll know before I do.
I would love it.
I look at my calendar for this week, and you may see me coming a month from now. So reach out to me if you see me coming, and we'll get together.
Man. You got it. Buff, you were talking earlier about your match, your WWE match, and how they gave you wrong advice to sabotage you. I'll say it. You know, don't look in front of the camera. That's ridiculous.
What does that
Anyone that
mean?
knows, that was your gimmick.
What does it even mean?
You would mug in front of the camera, right? Did you ever think to yourself, even a little bit, walking down the ramp, you know what? I'm going to call an audible here. I'm going to do me, forget what they told me.
God, that is I've never felt like I feel right now with the way you've asked that. And it's a great way you ask it. And the way I'm going to answer it, it's important for you to hear this. I didn't because I wanted to do the right thing. I had unnecessary heat that really shouldn't even have been in the first place. The unnecessary heat that I had, I got rid of it by getting rid of my contract to save them. It's only 60 grand, but it's a lot of money to me. So as I could have sat at home and made another 60, but instead I negated that and I came aboard early to show I'm here to work for you, Vince. I'm here. I'm a team player and I'm here. I make those movements to get my name good and clear. And then Shane walks up to me before a show and goes, "Don't look in the camera." And I go, "Shane, that's all I do." And he goes, if you look in the camera, you're fired. And so down that ramp, brother, I was saying, "Don't do it, Mark. Don't do it. Don't do it." It was the hard. I'm getting booed and I can't look in the camera. Stacy Keibler's announcing the match. I'm blown away, but not once did I look in the camera. Not once. And it was hard to do, but I was told to not do it. So I did what I was told and I got fired for it.
They don't realize what they did to disenfranchise the fans. The smart fans knew. We knew something was going on. We knew, I'm going off kilter here, but we knew like what's going on here. This is, there's something's going on. But my next question, Buff, is there was a rumor a while ago that I read in a dirt sheet that WWE had put a full court press to try to sign you with plans to put you in DX prior to the 2001 buyout. Could you speak on that at all? Any truth to that?
Yeah, I can. I don't know what they were wanting to do with me, but nobody knows this. And I've mentioned it a couple of times, but it's not a thing I try to keep quiet or don't try to talk about. I just don't think people probably believe me. But Vince himself reached out to me to sign a contract for the WWF. And when he got my contract, he goes, "Man, you've got a regular contract." And I told him the story. I said, "Vince," I signed that contract before my neck surgery, laying in the hospital bed. Eric Bischoff and me had a handshake deal on a 1.5, 3-year deal. And that was a huge amount of money. And I handshook with Eric on it. I go out in Columbia, South Carolina and break my neck. That contract's gone, I think. Yeah. Eric calls me up and goes, "Hey, I'm sure you're not worried about your contract." I go, "Stop." I go, "I am worried." He goes, "Well, I'll just courier it to you right now to your hospital." I said, "What?" And so he couriers it back when couriers were the thing. He couriers it to the hospital. A contract this thick. I just turned the last page and I got first class ticketing, hotels, rent-a-cars, 1.5. Get it back to him. And so all the stuff I could have took out because I was Buff Bagwell, I didn't care because I'm a WCW guy anyway. But by not doing that, Vince couldn't touch me. I wasn't even upset about it because I'm 31, brother. I don't really care. I don't really need to go to Vince right now. I'm not in any danger here. Yeah. I'm in a perfect position. I'm Buff Bagwell, 31 years old. I'm healthy. I'm good. There's nothing stopping me from running this whole thing, brother. And except if Vince buys WCW, then it's all going to go down, and it went down like that for me. But it did. He did. I don't know to what degree, but they did the whole fly me up, me and my wife up. They fly you up. They fly you up first class, limousine pickup. You go to Vince's house. You have dinner. You talk about your contract. You get back on first class. You come back home all the same day. That's how it's been for 100 years with the WWF. So they go out, first class ticket. We land, and Shane meets us and goes, my dad couldn't make it. I really believe, looking back on it, I really believe that something about the WCW thing was going on right here. I really do. And that may not be the story, but it's awful weird that Vince's wine and dine thing he does, he didn't show for it. So
Absolutely.
I don't know, maybe if he didn't need me then or decided he didn't want me, but there was no bad word for Buff Bagwell at this stage. Everything's flowing 100 miles an hour, great. But he did court me, and they couldn't touch me because of my contract. And Vince's last words to me was, he said, we can't do business. He said, we're not doing business right now. He goes, but we will be doing business. And I said, thank you so much, Vince. Nice to talk to you. And I never told nobody that story because, you know, I felt a little bit bad about backdooring Eric and them going to even see Vince, you know. But again, I was, 28, 29, whatever I was, very excited about Vince McMahon calling you up. So, of course, why not go at least see what he's got to say? No big deal, no harm, no foul. And so I did so, and it didn't work out that way. And then, man, could I not have signed that contract in any worse of a month ever, except 1 month away from when Vince took us over.
Yeah, well, your story's not over, Buff. There's a match that we're gonna see. I know it.
Absolutely.
Just know it. I'm gonna make it happen.
Yes.
Buff, my last question: do you have any hard feelings whatsoever to Ricky Steiner for the Top Rope Bulldog?
Oh, absolutely not. Rick, kind of taking that move a 1,000 times, brother, and it just was a freak accident. Rick, the truth is, and a lot of people don't know this, and it's still I don't hold any grudges over it. The truth is, Ricky's shoulder was hurt real bad, and he needed. Matter of fact, when I had my broke neck, he went in. If you check your books and you got your stuff caught up on, he had shoulder surgery right after I had my neck surgery.
Separated shoulder. Yeah, year and a half.
So he went in that match. His shoulder was hurt real bad, and that's the reason why he missed me. But again, if I start mapping that out, I got some land for sale for you. So it's got nothing to do with it. But theoretically, he did miss me because his shoulder was bad, and because he missed me is why I did all that. But he came to the hospital. He saw me. He had tears in his eyes. I was like, yeah. I said, come on, man.
It's amazing. You're a miracle, man. You're a miracle.
Thank you, brother.
Well, Buff, let me say in closing that you are tough. You're rough. The ladies can't get enough. And, brother, you're still the stuff.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Chase.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah,
Thank you
absolutely.
guys so much.
Thank you, man. All right. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your Friday night here, but I really appreciate you joining us. So thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Yeah, and we'll have to do it again sometime because I could sit here and talk to you endlessly, man.
Me too, brother. Hey, I'll look at your reel you sent me,
sure,
and we'll be talking about that stuff for sure for you.
All right, that sounds good, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Chase.
All right. Yep. Take care.
Have a good one, brother.